Day of Live at the Waterhole. My name is Taylor McCurdy, and I'm very excited to be hosting you for the next 2 hours. And today we're starting off with a troop of baboons at Juma Private Game Reserve. But they have been feeding here for quite some time, so I hope that they stick around for a little bit longer, but I suppose we'll just have to wait and see. Well, they're moving off to the next shady tree. But if this is your first time joining us on Live at the Waterhole, welcome, welcome. This is a live and interactive safari show where I will be narrating cameras and some highlight clips from some of the cameras over the course of the week. So if you'd like to chat to me and ask me any questions, I love that because I don't really like talking to myself or listening to the sound of my own voice, but I tend to do that a lot. You can use the hashtag WildEarth on X or Twitter, if that's what you still call it. And then, of course, if you're watching on YouTube, please, I encourage you to chat away on the YouTube chat. And if that's not doing it for you, then can you believe there's a third way that you can ask us questions? You can head on over to the WildEarth website and use the question box there. But look at this, that young chakma baboon, an infant is what we call them when they're little, I suppose, like human babies, using the wire that's been wrapped around this marula tree to assist it in climbing. Isn't that clever? Now, if you're wondering, Taylor, why on earth is there wire on the tree? Isn't that dangerous for the animals? Well, it's quite interesting. So I'm just going to give you the short version of the story, and maybe until we see some elephants. But elephants like to push down big trees. As we all know, they stretch up nice and tall, use their trunks and pull down branches. And occasionally during dry season, they'll push them over so that they can feed on the juicy roots. It looks like we're having some focus issues, but it should come back around now. And so one of the techniques that are being used to try and prevent the trees from being pushed over is by wrapping them with this mesh wire, making it a little bit more difficult. It does deter them. It doesn't stop it completely, but they have noticed a slight improvement, which is awesome. So good for this little one, can use the tree quite easily as a jungle gym now. Although I say this, baboons are really good at climbing, as we know. We've got a couple of people who have jumped on to say hello. We've got Joan Mello, hello to you. We've got Jive Bunny, who said mischief makers, those baboons. And Jive Bunny has also mentioned that the baboons like to rearrange the camera. Fair enough, I'd probably do the same thing. But they're all using the marula trees and the knob thorns just in this open area to stay nice and cool. Oh, and look at this. Look, this young baboon has now picked up, it looks like a stone, right? But it's not technically a stone. We sometimes call them stones, but it is the seed from the marula fruit. So most of the marulas have stopped fruiting already, which is pretty crazy because sometimes it goes on a little bit longer, but we haven't had that much rain this year. And all that's left is either really old rotten fruit that's dried up from sitting in the sun. It looks like maybe this baboon has either been digging in some elephant dung, or it could have just found the seed on the ground. It could have had all sorts of animals feeding on the flesh and just leaving that big stone behind. I don't think baboons, I've never really seen them get the nuts inside them, but maybe today will be the day. So if you've ever seen the seed or the stone or the pit of a marula fruit, you'll notice that they have 3 holes in them. But those holes are typically filled. Let's see. I think that's what this baboon is maybe trying to do now, or it's just trying to peel off a little bit of flesh that's left. But those nuts that are inside are very tasty, but quite tricky to get out. In fact, I have to use a hammer or a rock to smash them to be able to get them out. Of course, when you're a little rodent and you've got small little teeth, you're able to just keep chewing away and eventually pop those nuts out. And I think with the baboons, maybe with their variation of their teeth, perhaps they'll be able to do something quite similar. And Celeste, hello to you. You've said hi, Taylor. Trust a baboon to be intrepid and opportunistic. Absolutely. And Ali Bamba, you've also jumped on. You're saying hello. And so is Sir 50. It's great to have you all on board today. And it's nice that we're starting with a little bit of action and something different. Obviously, we enjoy watching the elephants and all the regular animals, but it's not very often that we get the opportunity to spend time with a troop of baboons. And Jinlin, you've said, "Oh, hey Taylor, it's good to see me back on live at the Waterhole." It is. It is. I will be. This is my last shift for the week. Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm gonna be back on Sunday again as well. Sorry, for a moment I forgot that I'm also going to be joining you on Sunday afternoon, which will be quite nice. Perhaps with a gin and tonic. I don't know. We'll see. Marilyn, you've also said, "Yay, Taylor's back." I was here yesterday. You missed me, but we had a lot of fun, which was really good. I couldn't stop talking, and I almost thought by the end of the show that I was going to lose my voice. So please feel free to tell me to keep quiet. But thank you, all of you, for commenting away and sending through some questions. In the meantime, what have you got now? Also got a marula seed, I think. Just putting in its mouth, kind of rolling it around. They still taste nice and sweet, but not really getting much sustenance unless it can get the nuts out. But it's a scorcher here in the low veld, so let's go check out what the weather says the temperature is currently at. Well, as you can see, it's hot, hot, hot. I'm not going to lie, I've already jumped in the pool twice. May need to clean it, but why not have a dip? If only the baboons were brave enough to go and take a swim at the dam just off to the right. That would be really awesome to see. They do like swimming. Plenty of footage of them on the interwebs. So you can see that this is a female baboon. Quite easy to tell. And she's definitely suckling a youngster. Now we can just see her rear end. But it's not always the case that will see the young baboons strapped to the side of their moms unless, they're probably less than 3 months old. There we go. I can hear. Amazing. Sorry, everybody. I couldn't hear like yesterday. I could hear. There we go. But I hear the wind is quite strong, but that's nice that I can actually, yeah, it's nice to hear. Oh, there's elephants too. Look at that. And that's a small group of Inyala by the looks of it. Looks like we've got everybody here. I'm assuming that the Talamati breakaway Pride lions that were hogging Vuyatela Dam have now moved on. And I hope that they managed to get a meal. You can see this young elephant bull now just twisting his trunk, smelling the air. With it being so windy, I'm going to rely on their sense of smell and their eyesight a bit more than their hearing. And also an aeroplane flying over. Maybe going to land at Chitwa Chitwa or perhaps at Arathusa. All the guests checking in or maybe departing after a wonderful safari.
Our march to freedom is irreversible.
We raise our hands and we say, we will be free!
Great mass of South Africans deny their humanity.
This elephant looks refreshed. Anybody else feeling green with envy? Might have to get the hose pipe out in a moment and spray myself and my dog down. Um, but how much fun that he's wanting to stick around. Luyando, who is directing today, is saying the same thing. Don't you have aircon in the mission control? I've got the doors and windows open because, as you can hear, there is a breeze at Juma, and because I only live a stone throw away, we're experiencing the same thing. So it is quite nice. And I see that there are lots and lots of questions coming through. So let me get into them. Right, who's ready? Okay, we're going to start off with Rebecca J. Oh, you said that you've missed me. Thank you so much, Rebecca. That's very kind of you. I have missed all of you yesterday. I think that's why I had verbal diarrhea. I'm just so happy to chat. And then Cheryl Lang, you said, hello, Taylor. We're loving seeing all the different animals in the different locations and that you wish you had some of the weather that we're experiencing. It's misty and cold where you are. Well, you can come and get some because everyone's complaining. We always complain about the heat, right? You can never please us. It's too cold, it's too hot, the rain, it's raining too much, it's not enough rain. But I do prefer the heat over the freezing cold. So you don't often hear me complaining too much about the heat because I literally will just jump in the shower with all my clothes and put the cold water on and then jump out and carry on with my day. And then Cheryl, up with the weather, you're wishing for the hot weather. You've asked, do we ever come across any snakes? Yes. I actually told the story briefly yesterday of a little brown house snake that tried to bite me. Obviously, I wasn't out trying to catch it. It was just by the outside tap with where the hose pipe is, trying to stay nice and cool. I didn't realize that it was there though. And then once I saw this thing launch at me, I went, oh, what's that? It didn't bite me. And then I just left it. I put the water on a little bit so it made it a bit cooler and it was quite happy and then carried on with its evening. So it might even be in the house somewhere. And in fact, I worry as to how many snakes are actually living in my house. But anyways, we go with it. Had a violin spider drop on me in the middle of the night. Loved that. That was my absolute favorite. I launched myself out of bed and then I couldn't find it. And then eventually I found it and I was like, come on. So I put it in a little container and then I threw it back outside where it actually belongs. No, I don't need to be sleeping with spiders. Not my thing. Canine Girl, you also jumping in. You said, hello, Taylor. You're just popping in and out because of work, but you hope that we all have a great day. Well, I hope you have a great day too, Canine Girl. And yeah, maybe just keep an eye on. You never know what exciting things might pass our way. But sadly, the baboons have moved on, and I see there are a lot of questions about baboons coming through now. But maybe we see them a little bit later. Or perhaps you can ask some of these questions again on the sunset safari, and maybe one of the naturalists will be able to find them for you. Although we would have better sightings on the cameras. As most of you know, humans and baboons haven't historically had the greatest relationship, and that means that they ran away from us quite a bit. This elephant bull, not sure what he's up to. He's having a bit of a scratch in his back legs. He splashed himself with water. Maybe he'll come in for another sip of water, or he might just walk on that sort of game path all the way around the edge of the waterhole. No friends with him today, just on his own, which is also not unusual. We see this quite often with elephants, even the younger bulls when they're trying to find their footing and their place in the natural world. There we go, can't resist. Not having a drink just yet, still splashing himself with mud and water. And that's going to cool them down so nicely. While I was in Botswana, sadly, we found an elephant that had died. No one really knows how it died. It was in the Ngaipan National Park, and you could still see quite a bit of this elephant's skin. And obviously, I didn't touch it. We don't touch carcasses for the most part, and especially in areas where anthrax can be present. And in very, very dry, arid areas, you'll find that there's probably a higher risk of anthrax being around than in certain wet areas. But I say this, and I know that there's some ongoing studies up in the northern parts of the greater Kruger, or probably actually part of the Kruger National Park, where there seems to be an anthrax species that occurs also during the wet season, which is quite interesting. Wondering what anthrax is a natural occurring bacteria that you find in the environment, but sadly it is also quite often used in terrorist attacks. So that's how most people have actually heard of anthrax. But anyways, we don't touch, typically try and leave bones alone of animals. It's always hard to resist. But anyways, what I was going to tell you about that before I went on an anthrax tangent is the skin. And it was just crazy to see how thick the skin was in some places. It didn't seem like much had actually fed on the elephant carcass at all, although there's not a high presence of predators in the area. But you could so clearly see how deep the wrinkles are in an elephant's skin. It's so deceiving when we see them on camera. I mean, when I say that those depressions in the skin, or as we refer to them as wrinkles, were a centimeter or two deep in certain spots, it was really amazing to see up close, because then you get a first-hand understanding of how important it is for them to toss water and mud over their bodies, and how, in fact, with that mud and that water getting stuck in between those grooves between the skin, will really help keep them cooler for longer. It stays nice and moist rather than drying particularly quickly. And then Ali Bamba, you've asked, how old is this elephant? That's a good question. It's always really difficult to age elephants. So we can use a number of different things to try and determine his age. But it really just comes down to genetics, right? Because not all elephants will be as big as one another. Some might be smaller. We don't know what they've been through in their life. Were a lot of their younger years spent during drought periods? Did that potentially stunt their growth? I mean, there's so many different factors that you can kind of bring into it. Tusks are not particularly accurate in terms of aging elephants, because again, this is determined on your genetics. So you could have an elephant bull that is 30 years old or 40 years old with small tusks like this. So we don't really use that anymore to determine age of an elephant. And he's relatively young. I'm looking at his head. I'm looking at the size of his head in comparison to his body. I'm looking at how long his legs are too. And he doesn't really look like he's in particularly perfect proportions. His head his head actually looks quite big for the rest of his body at the moment, but he's got those long legs. So I'd say he is a teenager, and I don't know if he'd really be in his 20s just yet. But of course, we always just estimate. So maybe you could say he's somewhere between the ages of about 18 and 22 years old. That would be my estimated or my estimate. I could, of course, be wrong. Also, sitting here, I can't really, judge. I don't have a great perspective of how large he is. I can only really compare him to the impala that ran past and the blacksmith lapwing, which is not always particularly helpful. But he is old enough that he has moved away from his natal herd and is now exploring the wilds. And he'll probably join up with some other younger bulls too. And the elephant is now done his thing at the waterhole and off he goes to go and look for something to eat. Although, if he carries on going in that direction, he might find himself at Galago Pan. Not sure if there's still water being pumped into that little, it's an unnatural waterhole. It's kind of like the small one that's above, quite close to the camera. But I did see that there were a couple of baboons hanging around. So we're going to hopefully try and find them again. And then I can go back to all the questions that have been sent in by all of you about the baboons. So we'll see if they're going to be kind enough to hang around. Bye, elephant. Sorry, we're just still waiting to have a little scan around again. Here we go. Aha! Baboon, right where we wanted you. Right, let me just jump in. Let me find those questions again. Oh, look, thankfully they can't give up the shade today. It's just too warm. Okie dokie. So, LG7, you've asked if I've ever had baboons in my house. Not the one that I'm currently living in, thankfully, and touch wood, but I suppose it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. I sometimes do forget to close the windows, which is not ideal. But there are lots of baboons around. On the estate that I live in, though, vervet monkeys and baboons are too clever for their own good. And they do realize how sloppy and slack we as humans can be. And we tend to leave windows open, or we leave food around that shouldn't be left around. And once they've obviously learned how to get into a house and all the delicious treats that are inside you, they're going to keep trying. And to be honest, who can blame them? So yeah, they do cause a bit of a ruckus. I'll never forget at Juma, where Tumbeta House is now, many years ago. That's where some of the WildEarth naturalists and camera operators would stay. And there was so much drama because the baboons of Juma have 100% worked out how to get into houses. And in fact, how to open sliding doors, so glass sliding doors. Even if the door is locked, those baboons are strong enough, and this happened multiple times, where they'd actually just pull the glass doors right off of the railing, the sliding sort of railing, and then they would end up smashing. So you almost need to try and baboon proof your house some way. And yeah, they break everything. They don't know that they're doing anything wrong, although sometimes I think they do it on purpose, just out of spite. Um, which is always quite entertaining when it's not happening to you and you don't have to clean up the mess. But I did have vervet monkeys here once. I think it was twice, and Tucker chased them away. And I think they've learned that there's a big scary dog here now, so they don't typically come and bother me too much. And then we've got Tidenbach, who said, "Do baboons use or make any tools that they'll use while they're foraging?" I haven't personally seen baboons sort of creating any tools and using them. Obviously, we know there are primates that do. We see it with chimpanzees, obviously, I think are the best examples of primate species, so apes that are able to, make tools and then use them. But it wouldn't surprise me. Listen, they might not be creating a hammer that is recognizable to us, but they could use rocks to break things. They might do all sorts of things. So it's not something that I've necessarily seen. I always wave at baboons and do the peace sign and give them a thumbs up and hope that one day I'll do the same thing, and a baboon will either give me a thumbs up back, give me a high five, or who knows, maybe something else to tell me that they don't enjoy my presence. But you can get quite creative. They are highly intelligent creatures and not to be messed with, of course. And then Stephen Rousseau, hello, hello. You said, do male baboons stay in the troop that they are raised in? No, not necessarily. So it's actually quite interesting. Look, there's a big male baboon right at the back behind the marula tree. You can clearly see how much larger he is than some of the other individuals. So basically what you have within the troop, they're all very social with one another, but you'll have a group of males, the oldest and the strongest and most experienced males that will take responsibility for the safety of the troop. And they will also be doing most of the mating, but that's baboons also, uh, well, they just enjoy copulation, and you'll often see youngsters mounting mature females. They kind of just mate with whoever. But anyways, it's normally the big boys. Of course, the females do prefer the biggest and strongest to sire their youngsters. So we call it an oligarchy. That's the term that is used to describe that group of male baboons that look after the troop. And they'll chase away any predators, so things like leopards, especially. I mean, yeah, really anything. I'd be very nervous as even just a lion on my own charging into a troop of baboons. You wouldn't want to have, 10 big, strong males all rushing at you. That would be quite intimidating. Um, so, so those younger baboons are actually the ones that cause the most trouble, the most in the troop, because they're kind of at this point where they don't really know who they are, right? I suppose it's like, as young adults, kind of when you're reaching the age of maybe between 16 and 22 years old, you don't know what you're going to do in this world. You're not quite, well, you think you know everything at that age. I definitely did. But you really don't know much at all. You don't have a lot of life experience. So you tend to do things that maybe you shouldn't. So they'll challenge a lot of the males to try and get themselves into the super group. Otherwise, they could also leave and try and join another troop. But this is not always an easy thing to do. But if they've got like I said, if they've got a chance to knock off one of the top males, then they absolutely will take their position and stay within the troop. And then Celeste, you said, will a baboon really kill a lion? Is that possible? Well, one baboon versus one lion, definitely not. But don't underestimate the strength of lions. I don't know if it's ever been recorded that a troop of baboons have killed an adult, let's say a lioness, because it's unlikely that baboons would be able to kill a male lion, right? Um, but it has been recorded where baboons have killed leopards before. I know there's a story in Botswana that is often talked about, and the amount of times that I've seen troops of baboons chasing leopards is scary, and those leopards run for their lives. And again, actually, a sighting that it was Jamie had many, many years ago of Tundi, late queen, Tlalamba's mother. I can't remember if it was Tumba and I think it was Tumba's sister, because she had two cubs at one point, where there was an incredible footage. It was a live sighting where baboons chased Tundi, and it was just crazy to kind of see. Otherwise, you can Google it. There was also a very famous video recently that was, or I think it was last year, that was surfacing social media, where a troop of baboons actually chased a naive leopard that tried to catch a baboon, especially out in the open, so no cover at all. That leopard got the shock of its life. So they really have to be quite careful. So yeah, I wouldn't say that a troop of baboons could kill a lion necessarily, but they definitely might do something to deter it, especially one individual on its own, and make it run away. But that's high risk, right? We talk about mobbing behavior quite a bit. We see it a lot with birds mobbing other birds of prey, or mobbing a snake or something along those lines. And it's kind of a risk. Do we try and chase the predator away, or do we just hide away and kind of fend for yourself type of thing? So sometimes putting pressure on predators, especially when you're social animals, does work. It can deter them, but you run the risk, of course, of being killed. Jive Bunny has jumped in and said that a baboon opened the car door of your son's hire car in Cape Town, and that your daughter-in-law is still pretty freaked out about that. I don't blame her. The baboons in Cape Town, especially around the tourist attractions around Cape Point, is horrifying. I've seen it. I've stood and watched what they do. They're so clever. They've learned now that people keep food in their bag, so they'll try and steal your handbag or a backpack or anything like that. They'll open the car doors and go inside, and then sit inside and just help themselves to anything. And I can promise you right now, you might think you're brave and strong and able to chase a big baboon, a big male baboon away. You'll second guess yourself. You get up nice and close, and I can promise you that you'll turn around and hightail it out of there. They are intimidating animals. They've got canines larger than a male lion's. Just like I said, something you don't want to mess with, and they're very strong. Canine Girl, you said if a new male takes over the troop, will he kill the babies? Like with a lot of what we see in a lot of predators. So infanticide is something that we see quite often with lots of different animals. It doesn't just happen with the predators. You see zebras are notorious for doing it, and so are hippo bulls. Not necessarily, and the reason why I say that is because it's not just one singular male that's controlling the troop. It's a group of males. So he's most likely been in the troop beforehand, so it doesn't make any sense for him to kill the offspring. He'll just mate with whichever females are in estrus. So I wouldn't say that that's something that necessarily happens. What can happen, though, is if pregnant females are harassed consistently by other members of the troop, it can stress them out so much that they can have a miscarriage. So yeah, interesting, but I can't say that I've ever seen or heard of a young baboon being killed. For the infanticide terms. Good luck if one individual, I think, kills another baboon in a troop, right? I think there's going to be big trouble, big trouble. I don't think that they would really stand for something like that.
This is On Safari. Now remember, this is live and interactive, so we'd love to hear from you.
To be having these incredible experiences in this wild underwater forest.
It was just one of those things which I don't think I'll ever see again in my life.
Thanks for joining us on our Sunrise Safari.
Well, now it's starting to look a little bit on the quiet side. Baboons, are you still around? Yeah, they're still over there. So, just a moment ago, Stephen Rousseau had asked a question about whether baboons use tools or not. And it's not, like I said, it's not something that I've ever seen, like personally, like, really extravagant rather than, I suppose, just normal use of stuff. You can see them digging through the elephant dung. This is one of my favorite things. And yesterday I spoke about it quite in depth about how much life is there. And listen, nothing goes to waste. There's baboons, all sorts of animals will dig in the dung to find partially digested fruit, seeds, or anything. And then, of course, all the beetles and insects that will live in there too. So that's quite dry, so can't imagine that there's much down there. So maybe some termites. But Luyando, who's directing, was saying to me that he remembers about a situation of a baboon that was in captivity. It might have been in a rehabilitation center where this baboon was recorded using and choosing very specific sticks to stick underneath the fence to bring objects closer to him, which is amazing, right? So, you know, animals with highly developed brains, of course, are able to problem solve a lot. And, it makes me sad to hear about something like that. The reason why I think it's maybe sad because it's maybe that the baboon wasn't able to, feed consistently. As we see, these animals will just forage the entire day. It's not like they're sitting one and eating one big meal. It's little bits. You know the saying, eat like a bird? Just little bits every now and then. It's the same thing with the baboons. Of course, if they can gorge themselves on fruit or something else that's around, they are absolutely going to do that. But normally, that's not necessarily the case. Like now, marula season is coming to an end. There might still be some trees with fruit, I suppose, and they're starting to have to use more of their resources. So to me, that also says that maybe this animal was understimulated. It could have been that it was injured and it wasn't able to move around too much. But I think when you also start to see things like that, it's just like, what can I do to keep myself kind of busy? So amazing. So they absolutely can use tools of all sorts, and but like I said, not going to necessarily be creating a screwdriver or making their own chainsaws or anything like that. It'll be very, very basic tools, if I can kind of use that word. Oh, Ali Bamba, you've said who would be the strongest primate in relation to their size? So if we incorporate primates and apes, sure, that's a tricky one. Hey, I mean, you look at orangutans. I mean, they're obviously amazing and highly endangered species. They're pretty strong. We look at gorillas, right? They're enormous and could drag an adult human quite easily by their big toe and drag them around and pull them up on things. Um, I I sometimes stress a lot about chimpanzees, and I've never seen chimpanzees in the wild before, and I don't know if I want to. I'm terrified. I think I've watched too many movies, but they're just quite scary. And I've had some people who have said that they look like they're looking straight into your soul. When you are able to see them in some wilderness sort of areas. So I don't know. I think it's either between a gorilla or a chimpanzee and an orangutan. I think it's going to be somewhere around there. I mean, obviously baboons are incredibly strong, but they're not as large. I have told this story before, but I'll very quickly tell it again. When I was training to become a guide, you don't listen. I still don't listen sometimes. I'm a terrible listener. But I was obviously told don't walk around with headphones in your ears because you can't hear anything. And I was glued to my phone. I think it was in between the lecture. I might have been listening to bird calls, to be quite honest. And I was walking back to my room. It wasn't in a Big Five area. The camp was separate. It was actually training on Amakala, and they had a separate area where the camp was for the trainee guides at Uluvani. And I managed to walk into a troop of baboons. So again, they're around the lodge. They're used to people, and they had a pretty good relationship with all of us. I used to sit and watch them all the time. So as I was walking, I got stuck in this troop of baboons, but they didn't seem too bothered by me. But I obviously stopped and panicked and took my headphones out immediately and went, how on earth do I get through this now? And there was this massive baboon male next to me, and he lifted up not a rock, it was like a boulder, with ease with one hand, and grabbed something underneath it and then carried on. And I just kind of stood still, and the troop slowly moved off, and then I walked to my room. But when I came back again and the troop was gone, I just couldn't stop thinking about how did this male baboon lift this boulder up with one hand and with ease? And I tried to move it, and I'm obviously not the world's strongest woman, right? But I'm pretty strong. I could not budge it. I could not move it at all. And that was the day that I truly realized how strong and powerful baboons are. So yeah, I mean, also the fact that one was, able to rip a sliding door off of the railing and remove it completely also speaks volumes for their strength. Peter, you're wondering how many baboons are there in a troop? Well, it varies for a number of different things. We don't see monstrous troops in South Africa. I say monstrous. It's not. I'm not using it as a bad word, but just in terms of just so many. Actually, poor choice word there. Apologies, everyone. But anywhere between, you could have 20 individuals right up to, I've read, troops exceeding over 100. But I think that's quite excessive. Maybe you could put it somewhere between 35 and 60 individuals within a really big troop of baboons. But that also just depends on food availability, that type of thing. And Catherine, you've jumped on and you've commented and said you think that chimpanzees are the strongest, and you also said certainly the scariest. You can see one of the it looks like one of the ladies that work for Juma, just walking back to your telecamp, also keeping an eye on the baboons. They're sneaky. And these baboons are careful. As they're sitting here and moving around and foraging, it looks like they're not up to no good, but they're scouting too to see, is anybody around in the main area? Could we quickly pop into the lodge, perhaps raid the rusk jar or steal a tin of sugar? Anything along those lines. And then I think this is Leander that's commented this. Apparently a 5-year-old chimp can fight and beat a Springbok rugby player. Don't say that too loudly to the Springbok rugby players. They might be offended. I can imagine. I would not challenge a baboon, a gorilla, an orangutan, and a chimpanzee for certain. I'd let them be. If they wanted my car keys and my car, I'd hand the keys over and open the door for them. I definitely would not be fighting back. I'd give them absolutely everything that they need. And you can see them. They're slowly moving closer and closer. The owners of Juma have their house in the direction where the baboons are going. So they could also be going to just check and just have a little look-see. But it is nice and shady as they head up into that area. So again, they're not going to stay in one place and just feed the entire day. They just constantly move from place to place. But off they go. But we do have a bunch of other cameras around, so I'm going to wait for some feedback as to which cameras maybe have some action. We could always pop to Rosie's pan. If it doesn't give us any trouble like it did yesterday, maybe we can do a bit of birding there. Or who knows, perhaps Aldonio in Kenya has got some elephants visiting the waterhole. Okay. Oh, let's actually head back to Madikwe Game Reserve, which I haven't visited in quite some time now, and check out the towel camera. Ah, look, look, look. Even the water here has dried up substantially. But like I said, we're in dire need of rain. Last time I spent some time here at Tower Lodge on live at the Waterhole, this area was pretty much covered in water as there were some recent rains. But this is vanishing far too quickly. But as the water subsides, though, it does present the opportunity for more feeding grounds, especially for animals or birds that like to probe in the mud. Now that they can kind of walk comfortably through it. And there's some spoonbills, there's yellow-billed stork, Egyptian geese, and a couple of other things in between the grasses. And then, of course, zebra and wildebeest in the background. They are typically residents around this waterhole, and they have to be because they need to drink once a day. It looks like the yellow-billed stork and the blacksmith lapwing are doing what they do best, just keeping up with feather maintenance. We're going to have a little look around now and see what else is out and about. A couple of young wildebeest having a bit of a tussle. Zebra just staring in our direction. Oh, look, a grey heron. Some more zebra and wildebeest. Looks like most of them have already had a drink and are now moving off and away from the waterhole. Avoiding all this green grass. Well, they know that even though we can't see them, there are plenty of crocodiles just lurking about, and they don't need much water to conceal themselves. So a wise choice. But I bet that the zebra and wildebeest look eagerly in this direction and dream of feasting on the green grass. You quite often see the waterbuck coming out and sort of feeding in the swampy areas.
Out in the wild, life moves fast. To capture the action, you've got to be in the right spot at the wrong time. Now, incredible animal behavior, selected from amazing amateur and professional footage, to reveal the secret lives of animals in motion. This is raw nature, caught in the act.
You can see the wildebeest all settling down now after having a drink. Always nice to have a siesta during the day. I bet all of you that are stuck at work are envious, although they're sitting out in the sun. But wildebeest have amazing adaptations to be able to deal with the heat. But you can see the little ones all gathering together because no young child, no young animal ever really wants to have a sleep, right? They always are difficult to get them to settle down. So, of course, they'll just keep one another entertained, and they might go enjoy. And there's a couple of little ones having a siesta now, but these three look like the three stooges, like they're up to no good. But they're so funny to watch. They're some of my favorite animals. And while I was in Botswana, I got to hear them calling consistently, and it's my favorite. I love the chorus of wildebeest on the move. Yeah, you can see the youngsters just pushing and shoving one another with those horns coming through as well. They'll be having a lot of fun with those, learning how they work, but not really hurting one another. Those are just kind of gentle nudges. I mean, even that, which had a bit of force, didn't really seem to bother the other wildebeest calf too much. There's also some pied crows in the background. And Joan Mello, you've said that you'd actually like to see a crocodile sunning itself. I suppose we can always have a little look around and see if we can find a crocodile that is out in the open. We had a quick scan. I didn't really see anything, but sometimes it's even too hot for the crocodiles, so they could stay in the water. Early in the morning is always the best time to see crocs out sunning themselves. Okay, so now everyone has to keep their eyes open and see if we can find the reptilian creature. I'm looking for even just little head and nostrils popping out on the surface of the water, but nothing just yet. And sometimes we see the crocs out in the sand on the right. Well, they might also be looking for slightly deeper water. We'll just have to figure out where that is. Oh my goodness, look, the birds are going crazy though. That African spoonbill, loving life. All the little crustaceans and fish and anything else that's living in there, all getting caught in these shallow pools of water, making it much easier, much higher success rate, of course, of catching something if you get stuck in there. Lots of little three-banded plovers. Those are those tiny birds, and that's the Egyptian geese on the right. So don't worry, Joan, I haven't forgotten. We will just keep scanning around as we watch these birds, and maybe we see a little crocodile snout pop out. Who's there? That yellow-billed duck as well at the back. Again, doing some feather maintenance. And the spoonbill, though, moving its beak from side to side. It's moving quite quickly, though. And just goes to show how sensitive the little nerve endings are in that bill. The response time of them picking up any movement and clamping their bill shut is so quick. So quick that you might even miss it. You can see where this bird gets its name from. The yellow-billed ducks, their call always reminds me of Daffy Duck. Not quite the same. Oh, there you go, big wing flap, stretch of the wings. Also, as they ruffle like that, they'll dislodge any of the loose feathers that they've been working around. Hi, Jenna from the UK. You said, having never been to Botswana, is some of the wildlife different there? Yes, so you get some different antelope species. I suppose the lechwe is the most common ones. There'll also be different bird species that you maybe don't see in South Africa that you could see in Botswana. Otherwise, they pretty much have very, very similar wildlife. But in terms of the habitat, the environments that these animals are living in, it's so diverse as it is in South Africa. But Botswana, obviously, being quite well known for the Okavango Delta and all the waterways. And so that's great. You can go on boats. There's like lots of streams. Some areas up, especially in the northern parts of the country, or north, sort of a little bit to the west, probably more central, no, not central, more northern parts, around the Moremi area, around the Kwai area, and then of course around the Delta during rainy season, kind of floods, which is absolutely beautiful. And then you move just a little bit further south into the west of those areas, and then you start to get really dry, arid zones where the salt pans start. So what were once super lakes millions and millions of years ago that have now dried up and only fill up with the rains that come. But yeah, this should still be lovely and lush and full. But like I had a big conversation about it yesterday, um, about just the lack there of rains, which is going to throw a spanner in the works, of course, for all the wildlife. But it's really beautiful, though, Jenna. We're so spoiled on this continent. There are so many amazing places to go and visit that are also diverse. Somewhere that's up on my list of places to go is Angola. I'd love to head out there. There's a common moorhen with the white coloration on the wings, yellow legs, got a red beak. I think there was another one also moving through the grass a bit earlier. Right, thank you, birds. You know me, I always love to spend time with the birds on the Waterhole show, but we've got two giraffe that have just arrived at the Old Donyo Waterhole. Here we are in Kenya. Isn't that crazy? Just the click of a button, and we're in a different country. So these are Maasai giraffe, covered in oxpeckers at the moment. Are you coming or are you going for a drink? Sometimes they come to the water's edge and then walk away and eventually have a drink. But like I said, they might have already been here. And now just kind of standing, ruminating as they love to do. You can see them chewing away and gazing off into the distance. But we also have the chance to do a bit of birding. Oh, what was that? Didn't anyone see that? It ran off to the left. It was like a little mongoose or something. It disappeared in the grass. It looked quite light colored, but it's probably gone now. Big clouds forming today, so we won't have a chance to see Mount Kilimanjaro, but normally at this time of the year, this is what we see. You can see, look how grey and heavy those clouds look, gearing up for probably an afternoon thunderstorm. These are quite common in Kenya in the afternoons. Isn't that beautiful? It's also really cool. You can try and get an amazing screen grab when those oxpeckers fly off to the right as they are silhouetted against the sky. A nice action shot. Don't think I'd be able to pull it off, though. I need a camera in my hand. But the taking of screenshots is, sure, that's a whole different sport. I'd love to be as tall as a giraffe to see what they could see. I once, many, many years ago, was sitting in a tree reading a book not too far from where my accommodation was on a game reserve, and just kind of escaping, enjoying some me time. And I thought, why not sit up in a tree? It's nice and cool. There were less flies around. And as I was sitting in this tree, it's also, this is a story that I have told before, and this actually happened at Giraffe Game Reserve. It must have been in 2012. That's how long ago it was. And this giraffe, his name was Diggler. Sadly, he's no longer with Karicha anymore, but he was quite a famous individual. Used to see him all the time. He was moving through the different accommodations, probably past reception. And then he actually was feeding on the tree that I was sitting in. He didn't realize that I was there. And I don't think I have those photos anymore. They were from my cell phone back then. You can only imagine what the cameras must have been like. I think I've probably even had a BlackBerry, so it wouldn't have been very good quality. But I was able to take a picture of this giraffe and I sitting in the tree. I think somebody else actually got a photo of me in the tree while the giraffe was feeding in it. And that's the first and only time, and last time, I suppose, I was able to look a giraffe in the eyes. It was a rather amazing experience, and just by fluke. It was just one of those things that just happened, and I happened to be in the right place.
If you are a driven nature enthusiast with a background in communications, then this message is for you. WildEarth is calling for volunteers to moderate our web and social media chat platforms during our live broadcast. Do you keep up with the latest trends on social media? Do you have quick fingers and a sharp eye? Then we're looking for you. To apply, email your CV to us at jobs@wildearth.tv. Join the WildEarth team today. WildEarth, connecting with nature. And just like that, moments pass, and you're now all of a sudden surrounded by a giraffe. Look at that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7 giraffe that I can see. I think there's one standing. Yeah, there is one just hidden behind one of the giraffe on the right-hand side. And to be quite frank, there's probably more just lurking about. Always getting involved. They'll just stand there like this, ponder their day. And I hope that we get to see them drinking all together. It's normally something that we see in dry season with all the different animals around, but there's so much water in East Africa and specifically Kenya and in this area that they really could probably just drink from a puddle if they wanted to. Bundu Bash, you said that you love East African thunderstorms. It pours down and then the glorious sunshine. I also miss them. I've actually been quite sad. I did a rain dance yesterday. Not that I think it's really going to help, of course, but I miss the big thunderstorms that we get in this area too. I don't think that they're as quite as spectacular as you see in East Africa. I cannot even tell you how quickly the rain just pours down on you. One minute you start to see the buildup of clouds, and it starts to get kind of gray and gloomy, and the next minute it's just a torrential downpour, and you normally get soaked in the process, but it's always a lot of fun, and it cools down everything around you just momentarily, though, before it gets quite warm again. But they are spectacular. I mean, I'm sure you've all seen iconic pictures, especially with giraffe and elephants in the Mara ecosystem, or even the Serengeti, where you have those big thunderstorms, and it's normally a big wide angle photo, and then some of the giants that roam the earth kind of just standing in the foreground. Here's an interesting question from Gary70. You said, do giraffe have the same spots, but they just get bigger as they do? That's most likely what happens. I imagine that their markings just sort of stretch with them as they do get older. But no giraffe pattern, just like with pretty much most animals, no pattern is going to be identical. Um, so you can use it as a good way to individually identify animals. Of course, you're going to get some that are similar, have similar kind of patterns, but if you start to look deeper, you might see that they are slightly different. Gosh, those oxpeckers look like they're driving this giraffe insane now. Once I saw a giraffe, and I actually don't know how many oxpeckers it had on it. It must have had about 30 covering it, and it did a big head shake. It was actually in Kenya, and it was the most remarkable thing, just seeing all the oxpeckers flying off of the giraffe. But you'll see they're all hopped down now, going down to the ground, coming in for a drink. And there's lots of birds. We've got some starlings at the back. We've got the oxpeckers. Looks like there's maybe a laughing dove moving through there. I think it's a laughing dove. I can't see a ring. And I think there was a common myna. Oh, no, look at that. What are they called? There's a buffalo weaver. Do you see it? There it goes. It wasn't a myna. It was a, I've forgotten what they're called now. I have to look. Sorry, I don't have an East African bird list on my phone, and then I do this thing where I forget birds, but it was standby. It was definitely a buffalo weaver. Aha, it was a white-headed buffalo weaver. Sorry, I had a moment and I didn't want to give you the wrong name. So there we go. That's actually a new one for my list of birds at Aldonio that I've been keeping. I have yet to see. There it is again. Look. Do you see it? Now, unfortunately, this camera takes a bit of time to zoom in, so I don't know if we're going to catch it.
but it's a nice color difference between the red-billed buffaloes weavers that we're all used to seeing. You can see it kind of looks like it's got a little black mask on its face, and then it's got some reddish sort of orange patches at the base of its tail, and also just on the wings, almost where the shoulder would occur. But of course, we can't see the shoulder of a bird because it's in its skeleton, covered by things, feathers and stuff, muscles. Patricia, you have said that this is a real African scene. Absolutely. It truly is, especially with so many giraffe. And now you can see that there are far more than 7 individuals here. And for the most part, they look like males. It looks like there's a female just standing in the middle. But giraffe are really social creatures, as new studies are suggesting, which is so fascinating. So I'm so excited to see what develops in the next couple of years about giraffe social structures and the fact that females are typically closely related to one another and that the males are very social too. I imagine it's very similar to what we see with elephants, where you'll see elephant bulls all gathering together, sometimes moving with one another, tolerating each other, obviously keeping each other company. But when push comes to shove around breeding times, or if there's a female in estrus, then you kind of put everything aside and every man for himself, or every giraffe for himself. And then Peter, you said, is it true that spots get darker with age? So it's quite interesting. I mean, I would have said for many, many years ago when I was none the wiser and kind of just also repeating a lot of what I was told, but I've now learned to do a lot of research. And obviously, again, with technology improving, there's new studies that are coming out. So yes, years ago, I would have said to you, yeah, they get much darker as they age. And this is definitely true to a degree. But not all mature male giraffe are going to be very dark in color. Sometimes we see them, they almost go completely black and you can't even see their markings on their bodies. Well, just a little bit. But this has also, again, got a lot to do with genetics. It's the same thing with male lions, for an example. You don't see all dominant big male lions with beautiful dark lush manes. We sometimes see individuals that have got miraculous blonde manes. So again, it all kind of goes down to genetics. I've also seen female giraffe that are very dark in color. So Peter, yes and no. And then Gary 70, you've come on again. You said you don't often see bird poo on animals. Do they avoid it, or they just avoid it, or is it just not visible? Oh no, you oh my goodness, there's some really funny pictures and videos out there. Gary, again, if you want to do some Googling or YouTubing, especially with cattle egrets sitting on animals. So maybe, with elephants or big herds of buffalo, where you'll see the feces pretty much all over them. Which is quite funny to see. With something the size of an oxpecker, right, that spends a lot of time on the giraffe, I've definitely seen fecal matter from birds on giraffe, but they're quite small, so they're not producing a lot. And also, it's what you're going to see is the white part of bird droppings. So as you all know, birds have something called a cloaca, where basically urine and feces comes out at one, and they're typically two different colors. You see the white, which is the uric acid, or that, and then the darker part is the food material matter, whatever they've really been eating. And that also depends on what they feed on. It can be black in color, it can also be green, it can also be bright yellow. Again, it's just depending on the food. So no, I mean, they won't say, oh, I don't think there's any manners that are taught to young birds. Like, it's not polite to poop on animals. They kind of just do it whenever. But I just think it's the size of an oxpecker that you don't necessarily always see it very prominently. But check out cattle egrets. Some very funny pictures with buffalo with big white bird droppings just going all the way down their face. I don't think that they appreciate it so much, but there's really not much that they can do. And I suppose if you're something like a buffalo and you're rolling around in mud all the time, that's often putrid and filled with feces, and you're in a bit of bird poo, not going to bother you too much, right?
Better is more than a word to us. It's a commitment to conserve our nation's precious landscapes, oceans, and wildlife. It's more sustainable fishing and farming practices, jobs and prosperity for our communities, and access to clean drinking water for all. Better is believing that together we can make a difference. For nature and for you.
This is a wonderful close-up of this giraffe. Another one just sneaking in. It's either the height difference there between the two. It might be an optical illusion with one giraffe just standing slightly closer, appearing much taller. Let's see when they when they stand together. I suppose only time will tell. Peter, you've mentioned that the Oxpeckers are having a great day. Absolutely, many giraffe to choose from to see who's got more ticks than the other. And then actually, Yvonne, you've just said, do red and yellow-billed oxpeckers do the same job? They do. Their main, I mean, the main function that they sort of serve on animals, on these rather large animals, well, not always the large ones, sometimes the small ones too, is to rid them of parasites. But it's not that they're like specifically that's their job, like that's their task that they've been giving. That's just where their food source kind of occurs and in abundance. And with their special adaptations to their feet and their beak, it allows them to be able to feed on the parasites that are feeding on the blood. So they also eat mites, which quite often live in the hair follicles of animals. They'll also eat scabs, of course, and even wax to a degree, especially around the ears. But the thing that oxpeckers are really going after is the blood. So that's why those big engorged ticks are fantastic, because they have a lot of blood. So we see them opening up wounds to encourage them to bleed once again, and then you'll kind of see them lapping it up. So yes, so they do provide the same function. And of course, they're great security detail too. If they see something that makes them unhappy, they alert. And of course, animals living with one another start to understand different alarm calls of different species, and they can react appropriately too. cheetahs and other animals. Welcome, welcome. You said that these are such beautiful animals. They are indeed. Especially when you, well, not especially, it always makes me chuckle how awkward giraffe look when they drink. There's not really anything graceful about them, but when they're standing up with their heads in the sky, then of course they are beautiful and graceful. And when they walk, but running and drinking, maybe not their strong points. But I suppose they just do the best that they can. Oh, loads of birds around now, especially when the giraffe moved their legs. And in its moments like this, it's always just quite nice just to sit and watch and enjoy and listen to the sounds of the birds and also the giraffe drinking. Nancy van den Berg, you have asked a question about oxpeckers, and if do oxpeckers eat other animals' blood, like dead animal carcasses, or do they kill birds too? I've never seen an oxpecker killing another bird. They could, of course, if they get into a battle with one another. For example, say it's maybe males competing for a female, they could definitely engage in a fight, and don't think birds are just also so elegant and peaceful. When they fight, they mean business. It's quite a hectic thing. So of course they could end up in a death, but it's unlikely that they're going to then eat them. I haven't seen them feasting on a carcass before. Again, they're after fresh sort of blood. So they seem to prefer that, which is why they go for wounds on animals that are living. So you don't see oxpeckers on animals that aren't alive, so on carcasses, and they normally will move off. The same thing though with the parasites though. Once a host dies, they will also typically move on from their host. And then Lola, you're wondering if female giraffes ever have to engage in necking to compete for anything? No, not necessarily. This seems to be a behavior that is typically seen with male giraffe, with the bulls. However, it's just like when we see, for example, impala ewes, the females, how they sometimes butt heads and play around. So it wouldn't surprise me if one day somebody shared some footage of, you know, some female giraffe, perhaps a younger, just maybe playing around, but it's not going to be necessarily for competing anything. I'm very scared to say they don't, because the amount of times that I've said that animals don't do things because it's not something that's commonly recorded and then it is then seen, you just look like a little bit of a fool. So animals are capable of doing absolutely anything and everything when and whenever they want. We as humans have come around and put restrictions on them.
But of course, that's what we do with behavior. We sit and we watch and we watch and we say, typically these animals will do that, but it's not always set in stone. So if you do disagree with me strongly, that's not a problem at all. This is just from my experience, of course. Like I said, it wouldn't surprise me if I saw that one day, but I think it would just be more of, having a bit of fun, engaging in a bit of play. What you will see females doing, though, is chopping and kicking quite a bit, especially if there is a predator around, and trying to go for their calves. Now you can see the oxpeckers hopping around quite nicely, very chatty. And I'm sure for those of you that have been watching the Waterhole show for quite some time now, you must all be familiar with the sound of a dove taking off. That flap of the wings is unmistakable.
Experience captivating wildlife documentaries showcasing incredible animal behavior for free by visiting lionmountain.tv or downloading the app, accessible on both Apple and Android platforms.
Oh, this is great. I love that we can just see legs of the giraffe. And there are a couple of comments that have come through. I think my favorite one so far is from Mrs. Hippie, who says, Giraffe's favorite song, Bring Me a Higher Love. Obviously, singing is not my strong point, but we're probably going to have to leave Oldonyo because it looks like we've got a bit of a glitch. So sorry about that, everyone. Let's see where we are going to go. Or maybe it's just on my side. Perhaps I need to refresh. Nope, it looks like there was a bit of a technical difficulty there. Sorry about that, everybody. And we are back in the Sabi Sand Game Reserve in South Africa on Juma. And just scanning the edge of the water, we might be lucky enough to see a terrapin poking its head out. Maybe coming to do some sun tanning or blacksmith lapwing or perhaps even a three-banded plover. I suppose I cannot forget the Egyptian geese that like to frequent the water's edge. Maybe we'll see the last gosling that is left in the care of the two adults that spent most of their time around the dam, but I haven't seen them today. Just lots of sticks at the moment. Oh, there's a three-banded plover. Ha! Not too terrible at my job after all. No, I'm just joking. Sometimes I need to give myself a little pat on the back. You can quite easily see why they are called a three-banded plover. Those markings are quite bold and striking, and a very small bird. Just moving along, pecking things off the surface of the water, and then, of course, any little insects that might be in the mud. It actually looks like it's got a little bit of mud on the edge of its, in the tip of its beak from constantly probing. You can also hear all the insects in the background that sort of zitting, and I can't even make that noise, but you get what I mean. Maybe they're definitely not cicadas that are making that sound. Maybe some grasshoppers rubbing their legs together. It could be a whole host of creatures, though. I bet this little three-banded plover is happy, though, that it's not being harassed by the blacksmith lapwings that normally move around here. And then Nancy, I don't know if you actually saw the dragonfly that zooted past. There was another one there, this little three-banded plover. But you've said when a dragonfly is most active. So they're diurnal. So they spend a lot of time during the day because their diet consists of catching flying insects. And there are obviously a whole bunch more flying insects during the day than there are at night. There obviously are a lot as well. But they eat like little flies. They sometimes catch bees. They love mosquitoes. So you can also see them quite active just as the sun is setting, that sort of crepuscular period, the last bit of light, when you do start to see a lot more insects gathering over the water's edge. You'll see them quite busy. And then they'll find a comfy little place to perch, whether it's a blade of grass or on top of a reed. And then that's where they will stay for the rest of the night until the morning comes around and they can start their day all over again. But you'll see there's plenty of dragonflies around here. And in fact, Vuyatela Dam is one of my favorite places, as you all know, if you have seen me on the live drives, the live safaris. I regularly spend time on the dam wall, hoping to add a new species to the list. But the last few times that I was back at WildEarth last year, I didn't have much luck with the dragonflies. But again, I suggested I think it's due to the fact that we just haven't had a lot of rain. I haven't seen half of the insects or arthropods that I normally see when we have good rain.
Experience captivating wildlife documentaries showcasing incredible animal behavior for free by visiting lionmountain.tv or downloading the app, accessible on both Apple and Android platforms.
Right. Sadly, we've only got a couple minutes left, but I can still squeeze in a few questions. And one of them is from Fuller. And you have said, what's the survival rate for Egyptian geese and goslings? For adults, it's probably pretty good, although they are predated on by, I've seen leopards catching Egyptian geese. A crocodile would quite happily also snap one up. Big birds of prey, big eagles, that type of thing. For the gosling, sadly, it's a little bit harder, as it is with any young animal. I can't remember how many. I don't actually know this clutch. The group of goslings that this particular pair of Egyptian geese had, and how many there were. I think I was told yesterday, but I've already forgotten. Maybe there were like 10, and now there's just the one left. And that's quite normal to only have one or two survive. It also depends on the area. So if the Egyptian geese are raised on a golf course in Johannesburg, they've probably got a good chance of all making it. But out in an area like this where there are a lot of predators around, they naturally are just going to drop like flies. Egyptian geese try to be the best parents that they can be. They're very protective over their young. But I think this is also quite, well, actually, no, Vertilla Dam is probably not the worst place to raise the youngsters, as there is quite a bit of vegetation and coverage just around the dam itself. So they can make a run for it. In other areas, like, around Treehouse Dam, for an example, which is another waterhole that you'll see on the live drives at on Juma, that's probably not as great. They've got to travel a fair distance before they can make a run for it to the tree line, and that's going to be invaluable for their safety while they are younger. But there's been a juvenile African fish eagle that's been hanging around the waterhole, and fish eagles absolutely love to prey on Egyptian geese, and in fact, it forms quite a big amount of their diet. So they don't just, of course, just eat fish. And then Peter, you said, do crocodiles ever go after the little birds, or they just don't bother? I think it really just depends. I mean, we see crocodiles and birds interacting peacefully with one another all the time, but then I've also seen crocodiles eating birds quite often. So I think it really just depends. Um, so it's kind of difficult to say. I mean, I've seen crocs, in the Zambezi pop there, it literally grabs birds off the surface of the water, especially out in the deep waters. Sometimes you see the smaller birds interacting around the crocodiles. Maybe the three-banded plovers that are the smaller birds when they've got their mouths wide open. Sometimes we'll pick things out of their teeth. That has been recorded a fair amount. So it really just depends. Good idea for the three-banded plover to run in the opposite direction to not ruffle the feathers of this blacksmith lapwing. That's pretty much doing the same thing. They have a very similar feeding technique, as you can see, pecking off the surface of the water. And then, of course, just in the mud, they'll also probe a little bit, but not lots, not like we would see with a hardy-dar ibis or an African sacred ibis, where they stick their beaks deep down into the mud. Just slightly different. But what a wonderful Live at the Waterhole show, right? It was really nice to spend some time with the baboons, and I hope we get to do that again soon. It was really great opening, starting on the hand of a Chakma baboon right here at Juma Private Game Reserve. And then the elephants and the giraffe and the birds. Nice to add the white-headed buffalo weaver to my list at Oldonyo. So I hope you were able to do the same. And start to hear more of the birds starting to chirp, getting a bit more active as the heat of the day. Well, it's still pretty hot, but it's not as hot as what it was at 12 o'clock, that's for certain. So I'm sure there'll be a lot more activity when the sunset safari starts. But thank you very much, everybody, for all the questions and comments. I absolutely loved it. And I will see you all again on Sunday. So please join me then for an afternoon with your beverage in hand, and we can have a little bit of fun. Cheerio, everybody. Have a great afternoon.